Welcome to the OnFARM podcast. It's Anna here with you this week. I am very excited for two different reasons. Firstly is because we're about to share with you a conversation that is one of my absolute favourites ever since we started the OnFARM podcast 4 years ago. I was chatting to a lovely gentleman by the name of Willie Logan, who shared with me his 91 years of experience living and working in Scottish agriculture. And it was just a delight to record and absolutely fascinating to listen to Willie's stories. But the other reason I'm so excited is that Willie has been helping us effectively to launch a brand new project that we're really, really enthusiastic about. Now, that project is called OnRECORD, and it's really a branch out from the OnFARM podcast. But what it does is offers a personal recording service aimed at giving you the opportunity to capture rural voices for posterity. So it might be a grandparent, it might be a long-serving staff member, it might be that you work in an organisation and you've got an office bearer who's retiring, or perhaps a partner in a law firm. Anybody who's got the most wonderful, unique stories and memories, we can capture those to keep forever. Willie Logan is the first person to take part in this exciting project, and we look forward to speaking to many more people. So sit back and enjoy, and then at the end of the podcast we'll tell you a little bit more about how you can find out more information.
Are you ready?
I'm ready, yes.
I'm Willie Logan. I was born at Athelstone, Mains on the 22nd of January 1932. I had an older brother called Malcolm, and I have a younger sister who's 7 years younger than me, and a younger brother who's 8 years younger than me. We were brought up, and the war came along and made life different.
Do you have many clear memories of the wartime?
Lots.
Do you? Yes, yes.
There's one occasion when we had a snowstorm during the war, and Malcolm and I went up to the buildings that are built, Air Ministry buildings that were built above Athelstone Fort Steading, and it was snow on the ground. And when we were there were people came to investigate a crashed aircraft, and Malcolm and I walked backwards in the snow, so the people thought we were going the other way.
So you were practicing the art of not deception, but stealth, the art of stealth.
And one of the things we did during the war was the whole family slept in one room.
So you were one of 4 siblings,
Yes.
So there would be 6 of you sleeping in one room.
Yes.
Was that for physical as well as psychological safety?
Psychological safety.
Yes, yes. Gosh.
And I can remember the cars all had a thing on their lights, so that the lights shone down the way and they were not very bright, so that the Germans couldn't see cars moving about in the night.
Yes, yes.
Mac and I used to do all sorts of wild things because there was no television or iPads or phones or anything, and we had bicycles and we played. We went to school, we played.
So you would spend nearly all your time outside, probably.
Yeah.
And did you know all along that you wanted to be involved in the farm? Was that quite a deliberate choice for you? Yes.
Uh-huh. What I can remember about the farming was the grieve was king of the farm after the farmer. Mm-hmm. And he controlled the men, told them what to do, and they all met in the stable before yoking time, as they called it, at 7:15, the first time I can remember.
Right, goodness.
And there was a little shed, Athelstone Fort, called the tool shed, where the forks or the hoes or the grapes, whatever they were, outside the door. Then he would go round to the stable, tell them all what to do, then look at his watch, and on a dot, they were to move.
Wow. So it was precision. Real precision.
Yes. And my father used to go absolutely mental if they stopped early or were late in going out, because there was about 10 or 12 men, and I used to say to him, "Why are you getting so angry, Dad?" "Well," I says, "that's a whole hour's work, because there were 12 people stopped for 5 minutes. That was a whole hour's work block."
Mm-hmm.
And in these times, at that time, before the war, things were tight. There wasn't a lot of money in the system.
No.
On a Friday night, the Grieve came to the house, and Father and the Grieve made up the wages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was all in cash, and the Grieve went and paid them.
My mum has an interesting story about that, actually. Because she grew up on a farm, and that happened one Friday night, and they had a housekeeper who stole all the wages and scarpered. They eventually caught her at Perth train station, I think, still with all of the envelopes in her bag, but she'd gone with all of the wages. And I suppose, these days we don't think about money in envelopes. It's all transfers and everything. So every Friday, everybody got paid on Friday evening, did they? Yes. Mm-hmm.
But life revolved around the markets. Mm-hmm. Father went to Lanark Market on a Monday because he reared dairy cattle and sold them. He never milked cattle, and he sold them to the calf. Mm-hmm. Lanark on a Monday, Edinburgh on a Wednesday to the corn market, and you took your chequebook and you went round all your merchants and paid your bills on a Wednesday.
Goodness. So that was at the Corn Exchange, which now plays host to bingo nights and balls and all sorts of things. Yeah.
And a Friday, Haddington Corn Market in the bank.
Oh, yes.
And Father died suddenly in 1953.
So you were only
21.
21, goodness.
Yes. And Mac was 23.
Gosh.
So we carried on the market thing.
Yes.
I went to the cattle market. Mm-hmm. Malcolm, he went to the corn market. Then after he went away, after he got married, I went to the mall.
Right. So the two of you ran the farm together for a time, did you? For a wee while?
Yes. 5 years. I think he got married in 1958. He went away then.
Right. Did he move far?
Well, he went to Nottinghamshire to begin with.
Oh, okay.
Then he came back to Berwickshire.
Right.
But he died. Well, Father had a heart attack, and he had one. I think he was 58 when he died.
Oh, goodness. Anyway, so young. Yeah.
And then the younger brother came along after that.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
One of the things that I can remember was having cold hands. There were no gloves when you were out doing something like putting turnips in a trailer or something, and you came in for your lunch and you held your hands under the tap until they heated up. It's painful.
I bet. So no gloves. You just had to grin and bear it.
You could grin and bear it. Once I got cold, they were all right.
Yes.
There was a wee space where they were getting cold. It was sore. Then once they were cold, you didn't feel it.
No.
And then when you had to heat them up to eat your lunch.
Yes. Otherwise, they wouldn't work properly. Oh goodness. So everybody would have had that exact same challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing that revolved around it was the blacksmith in the village. If anything broke down in the early days, it went to the village, to Alec Ainsley, who was the blacksmith in the village.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's how it went.
Yes.
But my really first bit of getting into it was I fell off a stack of bales when I was 13 and broke my wrist trying to help the men to build bales.
I suppose that could have been worse than a broken wrist, couldn't it? Mm-hmm. So you were just so keen, you were really keen to help and ended up injuring yourself.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Mm. And so presumably at this time are we talking about a combination of tractors, and did you still have horses on the farm at this time?
That's where I'm coming to now.
Oh, excellent.
I can remember Dad had 3 pair of horses and an odd one, which was 7 horses. Each ploughman had 2 horses, and then there was a spare one. Usually it was a boy that got the spare one to do odd jobs.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So it was never idle.
But Father was very friendly with a horse dealer who bought horses to put onto farms. And if they didn't suit the farmers or they were bad horses, they were sent to Dad to be retrained.
Oh, wow.
Because Father was a great Clydesdale enthusiast.
Did he ever breed them?
Oh, yeah, he bred horses as well.
Did he?
He
Wow.
bred horses
Yes.
and showed horses.
Gosh. So it's kind of in the blood then, because you're going to tell me later about your love of horses. You must have got that from him.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I'm the only one.
Are you? Right. But he must have had a really special touch then if he was able to deal with the ones that had been problems for other people.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I can remember the horses starting to disappear. And they had one Alice Chalmers 3-field tractor, which had 26 horsepower.
Gosh, right. But that would be a big upgrade at that point.
Yes, petrol paraffin.
Yes.
And they had a Caterpillar tractor, which had steel tracks.
Oh, yes.
And then he had another 3-field tractor. He grew a lot of seed potatoes everything went by rail. The seed potatoes south, but the weir potatoes, the big ones, they went by road to Newcastle.
Okay, yeah.
In 1961, he was buying seed potatoes from Aberdeenshire for £14 a tonne. Majestics were £10 a tonne.
Goodness. And how does that compare to now?
I think he's getting over 200 just now.
Gosh.
And I don't know what he's paying for seed.
No.
I don't ask too many questions.
Just let him get on with it.
And all the grain went in railway sacks. Now, you won't know what railway sacks are.
No, I don't think I do. No.
They were very strong Hessian sacks that held, what we called 16 stone, which was 200 bits.
Yes, yeah.
And they were hired from the rail. They belonged to the railway company, LNER or LMS or I don't know what it was. It was a penny a week.
Right.
And we hired them, filled them, and they went to somebody, and then they sent them to Saughton, where they were checked over by the prisoners and patched if there was anything wrong with them.
Oh, really? Right.
And bundled up again, and then you got them back.
Yes.
In my time, it was always 16 stone barley, 16 stone wheat, and 12 stone of oats, because oats are much bulkier.
Oh, I see. Yes. And so can you explain to me how the rail transport process worked then? Because you would need to get everything to the railway station, and that would have been which station in those days?
It was East Fortune.
East Fortune, right. So how did that all work then? Can you remember it happening?
The first Alice Chalmers tractor he got, that was his job during the winter when they were grading potatoes to cart them to the station. And all the potatoes were stored in pits outside, in potato pit.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't. Nowadays, it's temperature controlled sheds.
Yes, it's like that. And then they put straw up like that, and then they covered it with soil, and then the heat went out the top.
Wow.
And these were all, the people had to stand at the grading machine, and they were graded outside.
Yes.
Nothing.
Come rain or shine.
Yes. And the seed potatoes were taken to the station, and Father had to phone the station master at East Fortune. Can I have 4 wagons tomorrow, or 1 wagon, or 2 wagons?
See. Yes, yeah.
And they took the potatoes to the station, and they had to take straw. And then the porter, I think there were 2 porters at East Fortune, and to carry the bags and build them into the vans.
Yes. So they knew you were coming because you'd booked in advance.
Yes.
They were there ready and waiting for you.
Yes.
And you'd unload and then book in for when you needed to go again. So it must have been a pretty slick and smooth system. Yes.
Well, I think I can remember lots of rows on the phone.
As in wanting a slot, but they couldn't take you because they were already
father
full.
wanted wagons and there were no wagons
Yes,
available. And,
I see, yes.
So the station masters always got very well looked after at Christmas with turkeys and eggs and whiskey and you name it.
To keep them on side.
To keep them on side.
Yes. Makes sense, I suppose, because you don't want a delay in the process. You want everything to from the farm side. You want everything to be smooth running and get where it needs to be quickly.
And then the other thing that during the war we had to grow sugar beet.
Okay. Yes.
And that all went by rail up to Cooper.
Yes.
And that was all taken by this tractor.
Yes. And was that done almost by directive then? You were told this is what you need to grow effectively for the war effort, and this is what's required.
During the war, we were under direction from the Ministry of Agriculture, and we had to plough up everything if we could.
Yes, gosh.
But it was actually a good time for farmers. That was when the farmers, during the 1930s, there was not very much money in the system, but during the war, that's when they made.
Yes.
Which is sad.
Well, it is sad, isn't it? But that still happens, doesn't it? With the war in Ukraine has caused prices to increase, and it's a sad consequence. But what it highlights, I suppose, is the fact that the world needs farmers and the food that they produce. Yeah. And do you remember, when it comes to rationing, do you remember feeling short of things, or do you believe that because you were growing up on a farm that actually you were lucky because you still had all of this produce?
We were lucky.
Yes.
Very lucky. There was a bit of black market one time. I can remember the police and the bypass at Haddington, by the old road. The police used to stop there, all the cars on a Wednesday morning, all the farmers going to Edinburgh on a Wednesday to the corn market.
Oh, yes.
With their eggs or potatoes or whatever, and we're getting sugar or butter or out the back door of grocers and butchers.
Oh, right. So trading, no money changed hands, but trading items,
After my father died, like the rotation that we had at Athelstone Ford.
Oh, yes.
Was 50 acres of hay, which we put, because we had lots of cattle, and the dung from the cattle we put on the ground, and we had 50 acres of potatoes, 50 acres of wheat, then 2 spring barleys, and the last spring barley was sown down for hay to start again, the old 6-course rotation.
Yes.
And we had 370 acres of ground, and there were 70 acres of bits, rocky bits I used to not plough, and the grass field at the house and other bits that we had for cattle, because I was interested in cattle.
And how many men would you have had at that point? I know when you said when you were a child there were 10, plus the grieve.
We're down to 7.
Down to 7. Gosh.
Because I was there and Mac was there.
Yes. Yes. But even that, when you think about how that compares to nowadays, 7 is a lot.
And I used to love making the hay, because we used to get good weather in June and July. But like, it took a while to make 50 acres of hay.
I bet, yes,
And I used to rear a lot of calves. Dairy, and Father started a business buying calves, dairy calves, and rearing them and bulling them and selling them just at calving. And we carried that on for a while, and that came, then that trade disappeared. Then we reared a lot of beef calves, and that's where I made a lot of money, because I built up more cattle, and there was inflation at the time, and then sold a lot of cattle, and I bought a farm down at Jedburgh. I had it for 5 years. And then I sold it and bought this one in 1981.
Ah, right. So, because it's nice. How many miles are we from Athelstone Ford here then?
7.
7. Yeah. So quite close to make things more manageable. Yes. Yeah.
And going back a bit, during all that time, we were at the Young Farmers from 16.
Yes. Well, I'd love to talk about this because my mother-in-law was your secretary when you were the chairman. Is that right?
That's right.
So, yeah, I'd love to hear about your years of the Young Farmers and what you got out of it. And
We got everything out of it, plus a wife.
that would be a good marketing campaign for the Young Farmers. I got everything out of it, including a wife. That was brilliant. Or in some people's case, a husband. Yeah. So tell me a bit. I've been connected to farming all my life, but I wasn't in the Young Farmers. So tell me about what that was like back when you started. I mean, it was a key social activity, I presume.
It was the only social activity we had. The meetings in the winter time from beginning of October were every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And an evening meeting, and somebody came and spoke to us about various things, their farming experiences, about improving cattle and improving crops and all sorts of things. And that happened October, November, December, and then we break at Christmas, and then we always had Christmas parties.
Brilliant. Yes. Yeah. In a village hall or something like that, would it be?
Sorry?
Would that be in a village hall or something?
Hotel
or a hotel? Yes. Yeah.
And then we would go January, February, March. And I think it was March we had our general meeting. And at that, an annual general meeting was a meeting, a meal, and then a dance.
Brilliant.
And then we had summer outings going to different farms all over the place.
Yes.
And with it being just after the war, and we used to fill 3 buses, but the buses only held about 24.
But it filled 3 of those from this area. Yeah.
I don't know, one time there was 60 people in the Young Farm.
Wow, yes. Brilliant.
And that was our life, our social life, which was great.
Yes, and lifelong friends as a result, I imagine.
Yes, but the sad thing is no many of them left.
Yeah. Well, that's because you're still going strong, aren't you? So remarkably so.
But I was more interested in stock judging, and I did a lot of stock judging. And the late Jimmy Jeffrey, who was in Jukery, he helped me a lot and taught me a lot. And I won quite a lot.
Oh, did you? Don't be modest. Don't be modest. Tell me more. I certainly sensed when you were talking about raising the beef calves earlier on, I certainly sense that you've got a real passion for livestock, and that's obviously where the stock judging came in as well.
I was in a stock judging team that went to Cambridge and then judged dairy cattle. And we did do very well. And then I was in a stock judging team at the Highland Show judging beef cattle.
Oh, yes.
Which we won.
Oh, brilliant.
And then I was also won a dairy competition at there used to be what they call the dairy show in the Kelvin Hall at Glasgow.
Oh, yes, yes.
As you sometimes read the paper, you see they have dairy shows at some of the markets.
Yes,
but this went on for a week, and I was with the late Mark Harvey. Him and I won the competition one year.
Well done. Fabulous. Were you given a suitable trophy or something to commemorate it? Yes.
It's actually the trophy we won in Glasgow. If you go to the Young Farmers stand, you'll see a trophy with orange handles called the Chang Trophy.
Yes.
My name's on that.
Oh, excellent. Right, I'm going to try and find a photograph of that if I can't see it in real life. Well done. Brilliant. So it was a hugely social thing, but actually also everybody was learning something at the same time, weren't they? Yes. So really, really beneficial.
It was both beneficial and social.
Yes. And did you do speech making and that sort of thing, or was that a newer kind of...
We had to give reasons why we paced animals, which they still do these.
I see, yes.
A, B, X and Y.
Right, yes.
I placed them that way.
Yeah.
But back to the farm. We used to get potato squads to come and gather the potatoes, and they came from Newton Grange or...
Okay, yes.
Or Miller Hill, what do you call that? Edinburgh, Craig Miller.
Oh, yes, yes.
And all these places.
And that was what the tatty holidays, as they called them.
Well,
yes,
there
yes.
were women that came.
Right.
And the Newton Grange ones were good, but they all got too old when I grew up and they didn't want to come. But the potato squad sometimes didn't turn up because another farmer would offer them for more money. There'd be a lady in the village of Newton Grange who would gather 20 people together.
Yes.
And other farmers got to know the leader and said, "You're only getting 20p from Logan, I'll give you 21p." So
it became a bit competitive to get the labour then.
Yes.
That hasn't changed much, I don't suppose.
And I have been held up against the wall with a knife when I reprimanded some.
Oh my goodness. So that was one of the tatty squad who wasn't doing the job properly. Oh my goodness.
They were allowed a boiling, which is supposed to be a small bag.
Okay, yes, to take away.
But then they got greedy and they filled big bags. And then there was rows and fights with the farmer and not the farmer, the foreman, the grieve about it all. And then sometimes when you go out at night, the buses would be sitting on the roadside because there had so many potatoes in them, the bus was overloaded, it would break down.
That's a lot of potatoes.
Yes. And then father got really badly let down one year during the war. It must have been near the end of the war. And he finished up with German prisoners gathering the potatoes.
Right.
In December.
Gosh. Yeah. Do you remember that?
I remember them. I remember them walking down the road singing, and I think there was either 2 or 3 soldiers with rifles. Mind you, they could have knocked the soldiers down. But they were a very happy bunch.
Yes, yes.
And they were in a camp at Gosford at Longlidry.
Okay, close to me. Yes, yeah.
And they were a happy-going lot. But we were too young. That was 1940. I was only 8, 9 years old.
Yes, yeah. So the what it represented would have been a bit lost on you, I suppose.
But we knew when they were coming in, because they came into walk from whatever field they were in into the farm, and because they were a cook came from the camp to give them lunch.
Oh right, gosh.
And heated up soup. No, they were well fed.
Yes.
And Mac and I, you've been at Athelston Ford, in front of the house.
Yes.
We used to run over to the wall and look down the road and watch them come down the road singing into the farm.
Yes. Wow. Do you mind talking a little bit about your wife and how you met her?
Well, I met Betty at the Highland Show in Aberdeen.
Oh, did you? So back then the Highland Show used to migrate to different locations. Yes.
And she was a demonstrator with the gas board.
Okay, yes.
And then I didn't see her again until 2 or 3 months later. We were at a dance after a young farmers event at Perth. We met her there, and that was it.
Yes. And was she from
she lived
Aberdeen?
She lived in Edinburgh. She came from Dumfriesshire, Dunfannon.
Oh, okay, yes, yes. And how did she enjoy being a farmer's wife?
Well, she was a farmer's daughter.
So she took to it quite well. Yes. Yeah.
And she did lots of things. She was a very good cook, and she used to bake cakes for a hotel in Edinburgh. The teas, you went for wakes after a crematorium.
Oh yes.
Got there. She did that. And she was DC of the Pony Club for a year.
Oh, was she?
She was secretary
I didn't know
then.
that.
She was secretary of the Pony Club, then DC for I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
Well, James did a lot of Pony Club.
Yes. Well, we haven't talked about horses yet, which we must do. So, what year did you get married?
1964.
1964. Can we talk a little bit about these photographs? I know it's slightly going backwards, but you've got 2 photographs here. There's not an actual date on them.
It was during
the war. And do you know where that house is in the background?
No, I don't know where that is. And then there's 2 of them, and fathers in them both.
So they're photographs from during the war at the 1st Battalion East Lothian Home Guard, which your father was involved in.
Hugh Miller was in West Fortune, George Cunningham, who was in East Garrelton, father.
Yes.
Who was that one? Reid, I didn't know him. And that's Rupert Watson, isn't it?
Yes, Watson. Yeah.
Watson,
And then Gray.
That's George Gray. Kenneth, you know Kenneth Gray?
Yes.
His father.
Yes, right. Goodness.
And then this man had only one arm. He'd been in the army.
Yes.
He
Fraser
was
something.
Lieutenant Fraser. And Wallace, he was a minister in Dirleton. I don't know him. Well, these Robertson Durhams are in Gullen.
Oh, right.
They're still there.
Oh, gosh, are they? Yeah.
I don't know that one.
No.
And I don't know that one. And I don't know that one. And then the front row, Macman Johnson, George Hanna, he was the farmer in Drem.
Oh, yes, yes.
Cass Tate.
Mm-hmm.
Rogers, she was a Roger.
Oh, yeah.
That's her father. And
Right.
he had the golf where the Badger is now.
Oh, yes, the Bonnie Badger, yes.
There was a pub there called the Golf, and that was him. That's Cass Tate's father, Tom Tate's grandfather.
Yes, oh my goodness. There's a slight family resemblance, I think.
Father was in charge of the Athelson Ford branch.
Oh, I see. Yes, yes.
And there were all the farmers, there were 3 farmers. Dad was the first lieutenant, Brooks at Culduff was a second lieutenant, and Cunningham was a second lieutenant.
Oh, I see, yes.
And the farm graves of these 3 farms were sergeants, and all the farm workers, male farm workers, were privates.
Right, yes.
And they trained, marched up and down the village twice a week.
Yeah, gosh. And did your father talk much about it when?
Oh, yes, we all knew what was happening. But
yeah.
Like there was no office that you could go to. Like everything was. Like his desk was in the living room at Athelson Ford, which still the living room at Athelson Ford, and we all knew. We didn't know what he was talking about, but we were there.
No, but you knew what he was involved in. Yes, yeah. You must have felt very proud.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, and then. The ladies, the women on the farm, your mother and the wives, how did they all get involved? And not just during the war, but, in general, they would be a linchpin, but in a less obvious way.
Well, there was, Neil always said, a live-in maid, because I can't know, there's no hoovers in these days, was there? Or there's just an old thing you pushed up.
Carpet sweeper thing.
What did you call it again?
I don't... You're asking the wrong person.
Can you ask your mother-in-law?
Yes, I will.
And with the maid, that was 7th she to cook for. And
yes.
Mother spent all Monday morning washing. And then in the afternoon, it was hung out. Tuesday was ironing day. Then she went to Edinburgh to shop on the Wednesday when Father went to the corn market. Hugely
time consuming. And you can see why, back then, fewer women would leave the house to go to a job elsewhere, because everything that they did at home, it took all week, didn't it? From where I'm sitting here, I can see a dishwasher and a robot lawnmower and all of these mod cons which didn't exist, and everything had to be done by hand.
Well, there was a washing machine, but it had to be manual filled and manual emptied.
Yes, goodness. So ponies, we haven't talked about ponies yet. We talked about the fact that your father had 3 pairs plus 1. How did that then kind of ignite your love of horses, and how's your love of horses kind of been evident throughout your life?
It's just the same as you love anything.
Yes.
It's just a natural thing.
Was there a pony on the farm when you were young that you could ride?
Yes, we did have ponies.
Yes,
with a Shetland pony. And my first remembrance of the Shetland pony is, it's a big bit of gravel in front of the house at Athelson Ford.
Oh, yes.
And much to Father's annoyance, we got a harrow, an old-fashioned zigzag harrow, and with a Shetland pony, and we used to try and get it to pull up and down. We were sent out to weed and rake the lawn, but we went and got the pony.
The pony to do it.
And of course, these harrows were dangerous because if you put your feet in, it was crisscross metal.
Yes.
And if you put a foot in there and didn't watch how you took it out, you could break your leg. So what are you going to do with a pony if he breaks its leg? Well, so we had ponies, and Mac didn't ride very much at that time, and we used to go to Jim Cannot.
Oh, did you? Yes.
And there was a man called Mitchell, Jimmy Mitchell from Bonington. He used to run the gymkhanas at North Berwick to raise money for the Red Cross.
Oh, nice. Yes, lovely. Yeah.
Things.
And was that affiliated with the Pony Club, or no? That was separate to the Pony Club.
There was no Pony Club.
No Pony Club. No, and in fact, my daughters are both in the Pony Club, and I was reading something. I can't remember what date it was formed, but it's quite a young organisation in the grand scheme of things. Yes.
And then we had ponies, and then we found out about pubs and girlfriends. And the ponies sort of got back seat, and then after we were married, we started again.
Ah, yes. And so was Betty keen on ponies before she met you?
She didn't ride.
She didn't ride, no.
But she was keen on having them.
Yes.
And I used to exercise James's ponies. I had a horse, and I used to ride round the farm every night. Finish working with the men around about 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Have a cup of tea, went and got the ponies, and if James was busy at school, I trailed his pony along beside him. I had a horse.
Yes.
And I knew all the boundaries around the farm everywhere.
Wow. So was this kind of combining work with pleasure then? Because you were riding the horse, but you were also able just to go and keep an eye on what was happening in the way that you probably would just jump in the pickup these days to go and do the same thing.
I did it on horseback.
I like that idea. Yeah, I like that idea.
Then he found out about girls and pubs, and he stopped riding. and he did ride again a wee bit, but he hurt his back. He's had 2 ops in his back, so he won't go near them now.
No, well, don't blame him.
After James stopped, we started going racing. And I think I've been going racing for about 40 years. Just before Betty died, we decided to buy a share in a horse.
Mm-hmm. A racehorse, Yes,
and a racehorse, and I've got 1 or 2. I've had 1 or 2.
Yes.
And I've got quite a good one just now.
Have you?
Yes, called Serious Operator.
Oh, right. And is it a he or a she?
It's a gelding.
A gelding. Yeah. And is he winning? Where does he race? Where do you go to?
Well, there's 6 of it in the syndicate. I only have a pact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I've no idea. I don't know them. I only know them at the races.
Of course. Yes.
There are 2 of them come from Aberdeen, actually, the oil industry.
Yes.
And it's with Lucinda Russell.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. In Ross.
Yeah.
And we bought into it last September, and it ran 5 times last year and won 3, so we're quite happy.
Oh, that's pretty good. So
it's about ready to come out again.
Yes, yeah. And so do you sometimes physically go to watch it and then sometimes watch it on television? A bit of
I'll only go 100 miles from here.
Oh, okay.
I can still do 100 miles.
Yes, yeah.
But I wouldn't go to Cheltenham now.
It's quite a long way.
Yes, because Betty and I used, after we sort of got retired, I don't know, Betty and I used to go to a lot of race meetings.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah, all over the country.
Yeah, all over the country. I think we were going to go to them all. Things didn't work out.
No.
And I think we've done about half of them.
Can I be very rude and ask you your age?
91.
91. But you keep yourself busy with the racing.
Yes.
And
a bit of gardening.
Yes, yeah. And are you still involved? Do you still chat with James about decisions on the farm? Or?
Oh, no. He tells me what he's doing.
And you can then quietly agree or disagree. Do you mostly agree with what he's doing?
Yes. No, he's been super.
Good, yeah.
Yes, I actually allowed him to make decisions when he was 25.
Mm-hmm.
For years, it was always, he made the decisions, and I sort of said, well, why is it taking you so long?
I suppose you had to make the decisions at a young age, but not through choice. No. And so it would be easy for you to kind of hold on to the reins, but giving him the opportunity is the best way to learn, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
Uh-huh. I always remember one day there was a group of farmers came when we started the factory out there, which is 20 years ago.
Gosh, yes. Yeah.
And
that's the potato factory. So you make
peel
chips chips, and those chips go into Edinburgh to fish and chip shops and other places like that. Yeah, brilliant idea.
Yes. Anyway, and there was a group of farmers came from Fife to see him, and I don't know. The chat went, and they said, "Well, I'm not going to die and say I wish I'd tried that." Yes,
absolutely. Better to regret the things you've done than the things you haven't done. Definitely. As well as being heavily involved with the young farmers, you also had a spell involved with the Highland Show as well. Yes. What era was it? Tell me more about it.
Well, I gave up when I was 70.
Okay.
So I was there for 10 years.
Yes.
So you can work that one out. I think I was a steward in the light horses to begin with, and then I was chief steward of the show jumping for 8 years.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, that would be a great job.
That was an experience.
Really good. Yes, yeah. And again, I suppose a bit like a kind of later life young farmers, in that you get to meet lots of new people.
But I was also very involved in Haddington Show for years.
Yes.
And I was steward of the horses, chief steward of the horses, a convener and president at Haddington Show.
Brilliant. So you've had all the roles. Yes, yeah.
So I did all that.
And Haddington Show, apart from the COVID years, still thriving and still a really brilliant event to go to.
It wasn't as big in these days.
No.
And it used to be held in the Hawks along there.
Yes, I went there once, I think. I would have gone more years, but it was cancelled a couple of times, and then before it moved.
Because of rain.
Which we have just had in abundance. Well, actually, Argyll have really suffered, haven't they, with flooding recently, which looks like it's been awful.
And up north, Aviemore.
Yes, really nasty. But so fond memories of the Highland Show and your involvement there, and now James, your son, is the current director of the Highland Show, isn't he? And seems to be really enjoying it too.
He is chairman designate.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
he's gone a lot further than me.
Maybe he's got more spare time than you had. Sorry, James, that was a cheeky comment. We talked about Haddington Show, and I think it's just really important for the local community, for people to go along and learn a bit more about food and farming. And the Highland Show is an amazing spectacle for all sorts of people. We've talked about how things have changed so much on the farm, and some of those you must think are positive changes, and maybe some are more negative changes. But what's your kind of overall thought about change over the last sort of 80 years since you can remember?
The biggest regret I have is a number of houses of the good. A really rural country down along the coast has changed into an urban sprawl.
Yes.
When I was growing up, after the war, 50s, 60s and 70s, like you drive out from Edinburgh, once you left Edinburgh, it was countryside.
Straight away, yes.
And it's just so much of it has been built up, and so much is going to be built up.
Yes, they haven't stopped.
And I don't want to go back to the good old days. People say we want to go back to the good old days. There are no good old days.
That's just how you remember them.
Yes. Think of the one with the cold hand.
Exactly. Freezing cold hands. And
the amalgamation of farms and farmers working with each other, it's a sign of the times. I'm not against it.
It needs to evolve, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, everything in the world is joining up, if you understand.
Yes. And often that's about working collaboratively, which is a really good thing to help solve problems together rather than everybody working in isolation.
Yes. Yeah. And like, if you go out, say at District Harvest, for instance, and you pass a field and it's standing and there's a combine at the gate, and you go away for 2-3 hours and you get back and the combine's standing and going out, it's all done.
Yes.
Whereas years ago you would be in the field for ages. We moved from 2 combines to 1 combine. We could do 50 acres a day with 1 combine, and that was a big step.
Gosh, yes.
And that was 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago.
And have you got any, you talked about housing and the urban sprawl and that's maybe one of the negatives. Have you got any regrets about any decisions that you've made, or are you content?
I've made a few bloomers in my life, but I'll forget about it then. A few disasters along the way with different things. But no, I'm not going to talk about them.
No. And again, it's about, you don't learn unless you make a few mistakes. And sometimes in business, you've got to try things before you can establish whether they work or not. I suppose sorry, carry on.
Years ago, back to potatoes, well, they used to make a ridge, and you planted the potatoes where the field mark had been.
Okay, yes, that I can picture that.
And then you come up there and you covered it over, and there was no herbicides, so you knocked these down with harrows, and then you built them up. And one of the reasons Father had a 3-wheel tractor, because he could break the clods in each drill.
Ah, yes, yes.
They had to go through them with the grubbers. I don't know if you understand what a grubber is.
I do, yeah.
And kill the weeds and that. And all these potatoes were all hoed by hand, take the weeds out.
Gosh, were they? Yeah,
So they spent a lot of time with
Yes, that's the thing. I think the time-consuming nature before modern mechanisation is probably not something that I could appreciate how long it would take.
Like, there was so much hand labour. Like, when you made hay, you cut it with a mower, and then at one time we used to turn it, a whole lot drove, men went down with forks, turn it over like that.
Oh, yes, yes.
And then it was swept up and you made it into kiles, they called them, small heaps. And then they forked it onto rucks, and it was left there to cure. Then it was carted and stacked again. So the hay was done by hand, that's one. Then they kiled it, then they rocked it, then they stacked it. That was 4 times.
4 times, yes.
They moved it. And then it was put onto it was stacked outside, then it was put onto a cart and moved to wherever it was. Then it was taken to the cart. It was about 6 times that the hay was
The hay was touched effectively, yes, goodness.
And then if you go back to the grain where it was cut with a binder, like the sheaves, like, that was mechanical in my days. The binder cut it and the sheaves dropped on the ground. Then they put them into stooks. That was one. And then the stooks were put onto a cart. Then they were taken to a stack. Off the stack, taken to a thrashing mill. And then the straw was bunched and put in a stack. And then it was taken to somewhere else where it was used. That was 7 times the stuff was moved.
Wow. And now you think of, 2 big round bales on the forks of a forklift, the prongs of a forklift going up onto the lorry, and before you know it, you've got 72 bales disappearing to wherever. It's astounding, isn't it, really, when you think about it? Yeah.
I don't want to go out these days.
No, and I think it's nice to have a bit of nostalgia, but actually being realistic, it was tough. It was really tough for people.
We ate a lot of food in these days.
Yeah, but you needed the energy.
Yeah.
Yes. And you were eating good, wholesome food, not some of the processed nonsense that people eat these days.
There was no such thing. It's about beef burgers weren't invented.
Do you still cook for yourself?
I cook for myself.
You cook for yourself, do you, every day? Yes, wow.
I try to go out for lunch as often as I can.
Oh, I think very sensible. I'm just looking at my list here to make sure I haven't missed off any questions. I suppose two final things, if you don't mind. What are some of your best memories of life in rural East Lothian?
I can't think of anything. Lots of
all of it. Well, that's really positive, isn't it? That's really positive.
I've been lucky.
Yeah.
I've had a few hard times with Betty dying and one thing another.
Yeah.
I made a lot of lovely times together, did things, and growing up, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah. And you've got a child and grandchildren to be very proud of, and You can look out of the window and see the fruits of everybody's labour.
Well, if they want to farm, I think I've got enough, been able to give them enough that they can go on and do something with.
Yes.
That was my biggest achievement.
Yeah.
And I can remember Mac and I, he was older than me, and we had to make our own entertainment.
Yes. You must have been really good friends, spending so much time together.
And one of the things we did, we managed to get the Grieve to give us his key to his little shed that I've talked about. And we made what was called a guider of that day, which was pram wheels.
Oh, yes.
Old pram wheels were like hen's teeth. And you put 2 wheels at the front, and you put on a wee bar of wood. Yeah. And then you put a long bit of wood, and then the bit you sat on. And we took that up to the top of the cocktail Athelson Ford on a Sunday.
Oh, yes.
No, a Sunday.
Yes.
And it wouldn't go, and I had to push it back down the hill. So back to the workshop, boiled all the wheels, and we finished up the top of the wall. That was of
engineering.
That was some of the funny things we did.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, yeah. So my final question is, I suppose we could imagine Anna and Hamish, your grandchildren, in this scenario, but just in general, though, thinking of them as young people in their 20s, what would your advice be to young people these days? What have you learned that they might benefit from?
Do what you're happy at.
Very sensible. Very sensible. Yeah.
Don't need to follow father or mother or anybody. Do what you want, what you're happy at. Yeah. Because it's no use getting up in the morning and say, to do that again.
It's been really, really fascinating to talk to you. Thank you. So thank you very much to Willie Logan there for giving me his time and a lovely cup of tea in his wonderful, cosy farmhouse kitchen. It was really a pleasure to talk to him. Now, Willie mentioned a couple of times in the podcast there about RAS, the Royal Highland and Agricultural Society of Scotland, and watch this space because we're very excited that one of the very first projects we'll be doing with OnRECORD is in association with RAS. So we'll be revealing more in due course, and it's really, really exciting. But meantime, if you think that you'd love to record your own memories or those of your grandfather or your grandmother or somebody who's worked in your business for 30 years or is retiring, get in touch because we can do that for you and give it to you in a really professionally created file that you can keep forever and listen to over and over again. So if you head to www.onrecordmemories.co.uk, you can find out more about the project. And in fact, on that website, you can listen to a short podcast which explains in more detail exactly what the project is about and why and how you can get involved. And if you decide to record with one of your delightful family members or staff, if you make a booking to do that before the 29th of February, then when you contact us, quote launch 15, and you can get a 15% discount on all of the bookings, all of the cost. So that's well worth doing. And we'd love, and I'm very excited to speak to more people and get their fascinating stories because it's really quite emotional. And the last thing I want for anybody to say, after they lose somebody precious is, I just wish I could hear their voice one more time. And now through OnRECORD, that can happen. So we're really very much looking forward to it. That's it, really. I hope you enjoyed listening to Willie. We'll be back again next week. Get in touch if we can help you. And as usual, the OnFARM podcast and now the OnRECORD project are brought to you by the team here at Scene&HerdPR and Marketing. So big shout out to all of them, actually. Monty, who's under the weather at the moment. Dave, our podcast producer. John, our designer. Jan, who's basically a master of all trades. Kate, Marie. Thank you to all of them. We couldn't do any of this without them. So thank you. And thank you, our listeners, for listening. And we hope to work with some of you soon.